Ay kuchel siam siya asayu huelipton chile sang Lekwungen. Siam nush jelicha, siam nush walakwa. Aishka kwansana techel Lekwungen tanuk. Aishka siam nuquilia. And that just says that my First Nation name is Uhuelipton. The name is from the Saanich area. And I just welcome you to the Lekwungen lands, the lands of the Esquimalt and Songhees Nation. And on behalf of myself and my family, welcome to our home. Yeah, I think all the issues around, truth and reconciliation, goes back a long ways with our family, because my mother was also in residential school in a place called Kokalitsa, and and she spent, most her teen life, I guess, at residential school. And also my whole family, we've all been to residential school at one time or another. I was there for my first 2 years of education, which is grade 1 and grade 2. And this time of year, it's been really difficult for a lot of people because, I know that a lot of people use this time to help their healing, and there's just probably a bigger amount that's don't want to talk about it, because of all the things that it brings up, and sometimes, the orange shirt is just a reminder that you don't want to be reminded of, and my brother and myself are my brother Skip and I are the same way. We never have told our children about what happened there and prefer not to, but we have to acknowledge the people that do talk about it openly because they're courageous. They're a lot more courageous than we can be. So probably we'll keep everything, that happened in those schools, inside us, and that's why it's so difficult to deal with Orange Shirt Day. And I told my family that I'm not going to wear an orange shirt this year. It's too much of a reminder. And I was too young to really understand what happened. I think I was 6 and 7 years old when I was sent to residential school. I really couldn't understand the whole process. Some of the things that are brought up, when I read articles from other nations, and I read an article about Northwest Territories yesterday where they experienced exactly the same thing that we went through. And you realize that that goes back, many decades. And it all started with John A. Macdonald, who began the process with the Anglican and Catholic churches, and struck a deal with them, to apprehend or abduct or take First Nation children away from their families. And the real reason was, they said a long time ago that, your parents or your parent couldn't bring you up in the way that, that they should be brought up. So, but really, John A. Macdonald said that you can educate First Nation people, but all you have is educated savages. And those kind of things, that resonate because, that brings up a lot of anger. And I tried to put that away a long time ago, and I couldn't lead my life that way, with a lot of anger. And my mother talked about hate and said that, we should never use that word. Or no matter how angry we get, we should never use that word. And she was a tough lady. My dad died before I was born, and left my mom a widow, and with 6 children. And she was tough, and she was a hard-working lady. She worked 2 jobs every day to keep us, in food and clothing as much as we could. But we weren't. She used to always say, we're lucky we're broke and not poor. So, we always had food to eat, beds to sleep in, and lots of love and family around constantly. So a lot of things, that we have on the wall beside me is all the love from family. We've got a big family and we're blessed. We've got 9 children, 31 grandchildren, and 17 great-grandchildren. And we had one of the little guys here yesterday, and it's just a joy to see them, growing up. And he's walking now, and he's kind of talking, more in a screech than talking, but he's such a good little guy. And we look at, all the kids behind us, and they're all growing up. One of our great-grandsons his family lives up in Cowichan, and and he's actually dancing with the Cowichan people now, drumming and singing and dancing along with his dad. So that makes us really proud and speaks to sustainability of our culture. And they should feel proud about what they do, because that just carries on to their children too. So it's vitally important. So last time I spoke at Railroads, I did speak at the Orange Shirt Day and how it should be a celebration of resiliency rather than a sad day. And I know you can't help when you reflect about feeling that sadness in your heart and all the things that have happened over the years to our family. And most of our family were really successful, despite everything. I often call residential schools it was a deficit education, but huge on religion. And I guess, the regime of going to residential school where you lined up for everything and all the other things that, that we don't like to talk about, and I will never talk about them probably. But Orange Shirt Day is good, that people get together. And this year's Songhees is holding a powwow, which is not really part of our culture, but people will probably think that is our culture, but it's not. It comes from back east or the prairies or the United States. But anything that gets people together in a happy way is vitally important to the elders. I've got many people that have gone to residential school that have already passed, and they're in the other world now. And think about them often and the life that they had to leave as a result. But I think I read something, but I think it was about Zen Buddhism, where they said, it's not about yesterday or tomorrow, it's about today, which is a really hard concept to embrace, but I think, my wife Irene has taught me a lot about family and about love and the love of people and family and embracing every little bit of it, because, it's a good world when you look at it. If you ignore all the other things that you see on media and all the other things that are going on to other people, then you can't help but reflect on things that are happening across the world and to the world, as we move on. I talk a lot about climate change now, and that worries me because our foundation really is the land, and our language is attached to the land, and our culture is attached to the land, which is so important, but that message is really hard to convey to young people, and how they should, not only look after their elders and their younger siblings, but the world also. And the other important thing is self, how you look after yourself. And I call it personal sovereignty. How do you get to that point where you have that personal sovereignty and everything else that goes along with it, the confidence and self-esteem and the sense of belonging somewhere. So this is my sense of belonging here. I can sit here, what I call my office, and say, that's my family. And I'm so happy and proud of each and every one of them, because, they've all got lives, and grandchildren got children, which makes us our grandchildren. And I could probably spend a lot of time naming them all, but that would take up another hour or two. But I don't know if I really welcome Orange Shirt Day, because we live with it all year long. But I think it's important in terms of awareness and making people aware. I often speak against, I work for the school district as a teacher, and these always encourage us to talk about reconciliation in the schools and residential schools, but to me that's perpetuating the trauma of those schools and passing it along to young children who will never understand what residential schools were all about. So it's I guess sometimes you say you welcome this day, but then not really. So I'm reluctant to go to large gatherings, and they say if you've been to residential school that PTSD has a big part of your life, and I really believe that, because anytime I travel away from home, I want to go home because I'm afraid something will happen. So that's all those things that it has to bring you, large crowds. And I guess speaking on video is part of what I do. And to a certain point, I enjoy it because it's a challenge. And I love to challenge myself as an artist and a grandfather and a father and a husband constantly. It's a daily ritual. So so I really appreciate you coming here this morning. I did say I kwachale to you, and that means good morning in a good way. So we meet and our hearts and minds meet, and hopefully we can. It's really about people living together, and all the differences that we have as people and pets. So it's thank you for this time this morning.
Thank you so much.
Haishka.
Aishka, that was